Dập. Bên đây hay dập á. Mày mưa mau khăn đó mày thật cái đó thật tục đi mày chọn anh cái lại nắng á tục đi nhau mắt mày mưa mau khăn tục đi.
Compromise turn as well, kind of the same area. It's a weird noise. Sometimes Hi, Robert. How you doing?
Good, Shannon. Hi, Sandy. How are you both?
We're doing
Good.
well.
Good.
We made it to Wednesday, full moon and all.
Yeah, the moon last night was really spectacular.
Yeah.
Haven't seen it yet tonight.
Yeah, I haven't seen it tonight. I'm sure I will on the drive home.
Yeah.
On Shannon, I'll say it's good to see you tonight. I wasn't sure how often we would see you, so this is good for us.
Thank you. That's Mark, what, right? 9410.
Mhm.
This is Mark.
Hey, Mark, how you doing?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
Make sure nobody is in my email.
Sometimes you get those.
Yeah.
The last time's under attendee. Where's Susan?
Detailed email from Brian Panico at 10 to 5.
Hi, Dave. I see that you've signed in since we last talked to people. Hi, Rich. So you're on as well.
Evening.
Dave, I just want to make sure your audio is working. Can you hear us?
Hi, Robert. Can you
Yep,
hear me?
great, thanks. Yep, got it, Dave. Thank you. Hi, Neil. This is Robert. Good to see you signed in.
Thank you. You can hear me all right?
Yes, we can hear you. That's part of the greeting is the check audio.
Okay,
Thank-
good.
Shannon, did you hear from other commission members that are not going to be attending tonight? I know Bob is obviously out of town still. Shannon.
Correct. I did not hear from Emily, but I believe she's still
Teaching.
as a class as a yeah, and I did not hear from Ned. And that's it. Other than that, we've got everybody. So we've got
Okay.
five. We've got five right now. So we do have a quorum.
Okay, and I'm showing 7 o'clock, so we'll call the meeting of the Inland Wetland Commission to order at 7 PM. And Shannon, can you do the roll call just to make sure we know who's on and who's not?
Absolutely, I will. Yep. I do. Okay. Rich Berlandy,
Here.
Dave Fox,
I'm here.
Robert Eisner,
Here,
Neil Kelsey,
Here.
Mark Simpson,
I'm here.
Ned Stachin. Not hearing Ned. And just to confirm, Emily Brick. And no Emily. So we have 5 this evening, Mr. Chair.
okay, thank you, Shannon. And I'm wondering if we can bump the election till after the outward facing business. We don't have to do that prior to conducting business tonight, correct?
Correct. Yep, we can move it to the bottom of the agenda.
Okay, so if that's acceptable, do we need a formal motion?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay, is it okay with everyone on the commission to move the election of officers till after we have all the outward facing business done?
That's fine.
That's fine.
Okay, great, thank you. Then we'll move on to item 1, new business, Calco construction.
Okay, I believe Brian Panico is on the phone to provide a brief update for the commission with respect to where they stand on some of their additional data gathering.
Yes, for the record, Brian Panico, Harry Cole and Son, 876 South Main Street in Plantsville, here on behalf of Calco Construction. So I'm just going to go briefly through the changes since last meeting, to save everybody some time. We did some additional soil testing at the request of the staff. We also read the existing monitoring wells that were done. And we basically compiled and edited this new sheet to show all of that data. So it shows both the old data, the new data, how all of that data relates to this site and this plan and everything involved. Obviously, being that we've shifted things so much in comparison to the other plan, we did some additional deep test pits in the areas of the detention basins. And then we did one additional test pit in the area of the houses on the western side of the road. One of the big concerns with the detention basins was groundwater. If we put these basins, how deep can they be? Would we hit groundwater? And so what we've found was that actually both of these basins, as we're proposing them to be about a foot or so deep, both of these basins will be fine as designed. We will be outside of the modeling elevation. So that was another thing that we took a look at, was what's the high groundwater elevation at this time compared to what's the historic high groundwater elevation, which is usually indicated by redox and modeling. And so in that, we've gone through and just highlighted on this plan where those test pits are. And as Shannon's kind of highlighted them for you, those are the new test pits. And then what the elevations to modeling were in those areas. And so I believe the other main thing that we did was we looked at those, as I said, the monitoring wells, just to take a look and see. One of the concerns and questions that had come up was, is that high groundwater something that's going to be sustained kind of constantly, or is that something that's just seasonal? In going and looking at both the old test results and going out there and taking readings ourselves, we found that almost all of the readings that we took were actually substantially lower than what the modeling elevations were or what the groundwater elevation readings were back from 2014. That indicates to us that this is more of a seasonal high groundwater table. And so what we have taken a look at since then, and some of the modifications that we've been making, were raising up the houses and raising the basement elevations so that, as well as lowering our storm drainage in the road, so that if and when we build these houses and we decide to try to design footing drains for them, making sure that those footing drains are all done by gravity. Major concern from staff was, are these going to have footing drains that are just going to be pumping water out of the site, 24/7, 365 days a year? Are they going to be on pumps? Are they going to need backup generators and concerns such as that? So by making these gravity and by elevating these basements so that they're outside of the typical groundwater elevation, and while some of them do still fall slightly below where that modeling layer is, which is the historic high groundwater layer, that's not a level that would constantly be receiving water. So we're not into a groundwater elevation during the dry season. This is more at maybe the peak wet season. During the peak of the wet season, these footing drains may be working a little bit. So the soil on the site, generally speaking, we had talked about this, I think, at the first meeting. With the exception of the wetlands themselves, the soil on the site is mostly a B-type soil. In our testing in those detention basins, we did find that it's a sandy loam material. That material is a B-type soil, like I said, from the maps, the mapping by the USDA. That's a moderately draining soil. So as we kind of move through, I'm going to have Bart discuss some of the, who's our professional engineer at Harry Cole & Son. He's going to discuss some of the storm drainage. I know that there were some questions and concerns as far as what the overall volume leaving the site was. And we do have some numbers for you to quantify those volumes. And he can also touch on the time to peak for those storms as well. So if Bart is available and wants to chime in.
I'm not seeing him on the panelist list.
Not
Bart,
seeing him?
if you've called in on a cell phone, if you could raise your hand and I can activate your microphone. This is for Bart Bovee.
And Brian, do you know his phone number? We have one person who called in on a number 860.
You know what? He actually just texted me and said that he logged in, tried to log in from the agenda, and it came up saying that the host has another meeting in progress, and so we can't connect.
If he, so if he just goes to Zoom and enters the web ID number, he'll be able to get in.
Okay. Hang on one second. So I'll kind of start going through that, and he can, some of the numbers and some of what we found, and when he logs in, I'll let him kind of take over.
Yeah, or Brian, the other thing we could do is we could see if any of the commission members have questions
Yeah,
for you
let's-
while you
let's
wait
start.
for him to.
Yeah, let's start there.
So let's do that. Rich, do you have any questions based on what Brian presented tonight?
No questions at this time.
Okay, thanks. Dave, any questions?
Nope, not at this time.
Neil, any questions for Brian?
Not at this time, no.
Okay. Mark, any questions?
No questions, but I have a sump pump in my basement that runs at times, so it's nice to hear that somebody's not going to be inflicted with a basement that's kind of has to be constantly monitored and constantly maintained. So that's a nice idea what you're doing. That's all.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Mark. And I don't have any questions, Brian, for you, but I will just, while we wait for your colleague to sign in. For the commission, as Shannon noted in her agenda notes for us, we are going to have to make a determination on significance. So once we're done hearing from the applicant, we'll have to determine if we think that the project represents a significant impact on the wetlands and potentially requiring a hearing, or if we think it's a regulated but not a significant impact, then we would determine it as a regulated non-significant activity. Based on the notes from staff, there still are a fair number of technical issues that need to be resolved, and hearing the presentation from Brian already tonight, it looks like there's still some new information. So, if we were to go the route of a regulated non-significant activity, it may be prudent to hold off on a decision on the application until staff and the applicant can work out more of those details.
Mr. Chairman, this is Ned.
Hey, Ned, welcome.
Um,
So glad you were able to sign in. We heard an update from Cole Engineering.
No,
on
I've
Calco.
been on since the movement of the election, officer election. I just, but
Terrific.
I did have one kind of like a clarification. So this other letter that was comparing, we got from Brian Panico, is that, are they hired by Calco, or is this somebody independent hired by the town?
No, that's the gentleman that was, so Brian Panico is the engineer for the applicant who was just
Okay.
speaking.
Okay.
So, and that, Brian, I don't know if you want to touch on this. I did share this with the commission with respect to the, I guess, normalizing of the data that had to take place between the 2014 and 2021 plan, if you want to run through that.
Sure. So what we had found when we initially started this project and we started laying everything out was, generally speaking, when we took, Kratzer and Jones had done a survey and done a layout for Calco. And so then we had taken that layout and taken a look at it, and obviously given the history of the application, tried to see what we could do to improve upon that. And what we had noticed from their survey was that we weren't quite finding good data as far as surface elevation. And that becomes critically important when we're kind of start to talk about elevations in groundwater and making sure everything's going to drain properly and all of that. So we always go and we always shoot utility shots with our surveyors out along the road and anywhere where there's manholes, sewer manholes, catch basins, anything like that. And what we had found was that the data didn't seem to be lining up. So what we did was we went back to look at what datum was being used by the previous survey, and it appeared that it referenced a map actually by MBA Engineering, which is actually Barton Beauvais' company, who actually now works for us. So he's the gentleman who we were waiting to sign on. And going back, that we had figured out that was most likely assumed, that was assumed datum, And then when we looked at their survey, we believe that the actual topography, basically where the existing barns and such were on the site, that when we walked it, you remember that was probably surveyed along with the road, and that was on a certain datum, but the rest of it was probably aerial topography. And unfortunately, given the age of the aerial topography, when we overlaid that with our new elevations on 88 datum, the current state plan datum, and UConn's most up-to-date, newest survey aerial topography, we noticed a lot of discrepancies. And then it's especially prevalent once you've actually walked the site. You can kind of see how, if you look at the survey a little more in depth, a lot of those places, like where the stone walls ran between, that we kind of had to walk over to go, or walk through to go from the detention basin area back to the front of the site. A lot of those weren't really well depicted and weren't really illustrated in the original survey, just because the aerial topography wasn't as good back then. And so as we started updating all of the survey with this better information, then when we took the information from the groundwater monitoring data, it became evident that there was a clear discrepancy between the data as far as groundwater elevations, because now the actual surface elevations were totally different. So what we had to go through and do was try to normalize that data. And to do that, we basically, on that sheet, we show what the original data was from Pratzert and Jones, and they obviously measured from the top of the pipe to the ground, and then from the ground, or from the top of the pipe down to the groundwater to get their readings and their measurements and calculate where that was. And those are independent numbers. So what we went through and did was figure out what the elevations that we have on our survey for existing grades at those locations, and interpolating all that information, we're able to calculate what the groundwater elevations are in respect to our data. And so that's just basically, after a long back and forth of trying to figure out where the confusion was, that's how we ended up coming to this. And that's the information that's represented on that test pit plan. So that test pit plan information depicts their original data with what our new data and what their converted data represents, so that it's clearly defined. And then what we went through and did was we highlighted on that same, on our monitoring data sheet, what the most restrictive elevation is, and that being whether it was groundwater or monitoring. You'll notice on pit 103, 106, and 107, we actually used our groundwater elevations, and that's just because actually a couple of those pits were actually dry, but that was just the reading that we had gotten. So if you look at their data, it was a little bit deeper, but over the last 7 years or 6 or 7 years when this was originally done, sediment has probably gotten in there, filled those in. And so since that's as far down as we could measure as a dry elevation, that's what we're holding. It doesn't really affect the design. As I said, we've raised these houses up to a point where it's above and outside of that anyway. So you'll see in that table, modeling, or that seasonal high groundwater indicator, is the level that we've held for as the most restrictive on these plans. And then when you go back and you look at the actual plan itself, there's a note next to each one of those test pits as to what the depth from the existing grade to that elevation is, just to give you a better sense of where you're at. And so from there, we've also now taken and we've raised all these up. So even though, you know, like for example, we have just looking on lot 8 there, you have modeling down 2.4 feet, and that looks like it was existing elevation 340. That would bring you to 337.4, and our basement elevation is 337. So that's where I'm saying, you know, that there's 0.4 feet, or roughly 4 inches or so, that of groundwater at the highest possible point. That's the record high, and where that seasonal groundwater table appears to stain the earth. At that point, that's the high groundwater, and so that's the water that these footing drains would be taking care of. And so that's what we've tried to do for each one of these lots to make it easier and clearer to normalize all this data, being that the groundwater was such a concern.
Thank you, Brian.
And Unfortunately, Bart just got back to me and he said it's still not working for him.
He actually,
So-
we just saw him, I think
Oh, he's
he's in. Yeah, so Bart, you should be able to unmute your microphone and participate.
Got it.
Oh,
There you
perfect.
go.
We hear
He's
you.
in.
Okay, sorry for being late.
No problem. Sorry for the problem logging in. So we're, sorry. Yeah, Brian has provided a overview of test pit data and also discussed the datum shift that needed to take place between the 2014 plan and the 2021 data. And I think, Brian, you were looking for Bart to provide a summary of some of the stormwater information. Is that correct?
Yeah, Bart, if you want to just go through some of the stuff that we looked at as far as what the time to peaks were for these areas and what the volume of discharge was and all of that, let you take over from here.
Okay. Well, if you look at the drainage port, you'll see this area is basically broken into two areas. There's a area P1, which is the area basically to the west of the site that drains through that site and takes the majority of the drainage from the impervious surfaces that we're constructing as part of the subdivision. And then an area P2, which is basically the northeast corner of the site that drains to the north. For the P2 period, when you look at all the storm events, we're basically reducing our peak flows down on all events from the standpoint of, just get my numbers together. We're essentially reducing flows by as much as 10 to 15% coming off the back of the property. None of those areas around the back northeast of the property are going to be contained within the detention areas. The reason primarily for this is that we're kind of slightly reducing the area of the drainage area going back on the northeast corner. Majority of all the roadway, all the buildings, all the driveways, most of the buildings are being drained into detention areas that are located in the central portion of the property. When we ran the calculations through between the 2, the 5, the 10, the 25, and the 100-year storm, in all events, we're finding that the flows through the site are going to be reduced from our peak flows, meaning that for a 2-year storm, for example, we have approximately 4.2 CFS running through that site. We're going to be reducing it down by about 10%. So all of our flows going through the site, coming off the site and entering the property to the north are all being reduced by an area, comfortable area. What we're finding though is for the small storms, what I call the nuisance storms, the 2 and the 5, the stormwater management areas are basically reducing the flows to pre-existing numbers, meaning what's happening through that site, not going to detention areas. Those detention areas are not contributing to the flows through the site. It's only when you get to the higher storms that the detention area is actually functioning. The 50 and 100-year storm, the detention areas will contain the flow through those areas. We've designed the roadways to handle a 25-year storm, but we've looked at the stormwater detention areas for up to a 100-year storm just to make sure they're adequate. And for all storm events that come across into the P1 watershed, they go that handle the drainage through those 2 detention basins, we are reducing flows through here by about 1 to 2 CFS. What we are doing though, however, is slightly increasing the volume of water that runs through the site. The peak flow will not increase. In fact, we're putting less peak flow through the site than what's happening in a pre-existing condition. So this means that any infrastructure improvements in there will not be exacerbated by the additional peak flow coming off the site. What's going to happen is the additional flow that we're generating due to the added impervious surface will go into those detention basins. They'll be withheld within those detention basins and they'll be slowly released. Generally, we're looking at only about 2,000 gallons of extra storage required for the 200 years for the 2-year storm increasing to as much as about 30,000 CFS when we're looking at the 100-year storm. But again, we're not increasing the peak flows. And if you look at the pond design within the stormwater calculations, you'll see that that storm is going to be self-contained. We're not going to be using the emergency overflow. The structure has been designed so it can handle those 100-year flows and they'll discharge through the site. What we have not done as part of our design is look through any infiltration within those basins. Now we know, looking at the soil surveys from the area, those are generally B-type soils, which are moderately to good permeable soils, which means that we can anticipate some percolation. As part of our design, however, we did not assume that infiltration. We wanted to be very conservative for our design, and we did not assume that those things would perk. But in actuality, we know they're going to percolate, and we know they're going to percolate at a moderately fast rate. Brian has run some numbers through and has determined that if we use a B-type soil and about 30 minutes each perk, which everybody's familiar with from sanitary design, which is a moderate to fast perk, or I'm sorry, a moderate perk, not even a fast perk, that we'd probably reduce the amount of stormwater runoff volume so that they're less than pre-existing conditions, and the two storage basins will be able to self-contain and hold, and we'll have a zero increase or a less of an increase in flow coming off the site. I think we generated some numbers. Unfortunately, I'm working on a single screen, so it's a little hard for me to get things to work here, but let me see if I can get that email. Maybe Brian, you can cite
Yeah,
those.
I'll, so for the 100-year storm, as Bart had mentioned, the existing total volume off-site for the 100-year storm for that area to the north was 53,442 cubic feet. And in the proposed for that, because we've reduced that area so much, is down to 36,868 cubic feet. And that was for that P2 area. Now, what we've gone ahead and done is say for if we use the 30-minute per inch exfiltration out of the basin, so the 30-minute per inch perk, we reduce, so E1, which is that larger area going into the wetland, that was 230,875 cubic feet of runoff. And it would be, after development with the detention basins, 227,047 cubic feet. So roughly 35, or I'm sorry, roughly 3,800 cubic feet of volume being reduced. And that's assuming a 30-minute per inch percolation rate. I think those were the numbers that you were looking for, Bart. And another consideration, we had compared the existing storm drainage report, or the storm drainage report from the previous application. As we had discussed before, they had one larger detention basin in the woods. It was about 5 feet deep. That detention basin was sized to store about 16,000 cubic feet of runoff. The total of our two basins is a total of, we're storing about 40,000 cubic feet of volume there. So we've more than doubled the size of storage and volume in our basins as well. So that is where that significant, and I believe I don't have the number in front of me, but I'm pretty sure the actual time to peak for the previous application was only around 81 minutes. Looking at that original storm drainage report. So as Bart has discussed, we've significantly deterred the storm and held it back so that we're releasing at a much longer time interval, and we're storing a lot more volume, or able to store a lot more volume on the site, and breaking it up into these two portions.
And I should point out, by breaking it up into two separate detention areas instead of one larger, deeper one, the potential for infiltration is greater now because we've got more surface area covering the bottom, and we'll be able to use more potential infiltration, which will further reduce the amount of flow coming off the site. So all in all, you know, I understand the neighbors have some concerns to the north, but all in all, we are lowering the peak flow through the system. We've checked through the 100-year storm, even though I believe the city or the town requires a 25-year storm on the roadways, but even looking at the outfall on 100-year storm, we are reducing the peak, and we have the potential to infiltrate that through. So the net increase in flow is going to be less than what's happening at the present time.
Okay, thank you, Bart and Brian. Is there anything else to update the commission on?
No, I think the only other thing, and Shannon, I know that you had asked, we would be happy to grant an extension. I know that town staff hadn't had a chance to go through all of this data, as it took us a little while to get everything collected and get out there and do all of this and get them everything. If it would make it easier for town staff, we'd happily grant an extension so they can have more time to review all this new data and all the new information, if that makes life easier.
Yeah, thank you.
And I can also point out that, you know, if wanted, we can even quantify the infiltration rates out there. We've been making some general assumptions. We've tried to be as conservative as possible, but we can quantify that percolation rate out in that site to verify what we said is true at the next meeting.
Great, thank you. I'll run through the commission members in reverse order this time. And Ned, I apologize for not picking up that you had signed on to the meeting earlier. So I want to make sure you had all your questions to Brian answered. If not, you can ask those now or move on to questions for Bart if you have any, Ned.
Yeah, no problem. Sorry I'm late. But when we were discussing earlier, when Brian was going over the elevations of the high water marks and the test pits compared to the elevations of the basement, and to try and show that difference is being provided with the higher elevations. But I'm not sure, what if, I mean, during a storm and the sediment basin starts filling up, isn't that going to raise the water levels in that area? You know, the groundwater levels in the area once the sediment basin starts filling up?
So those detention basins are going to fill up. They do have, you know, if it was a 100-year storm, as we discussed, and I can pull out the storm drainage report, but the maximum elevation that water will ever reach, I believe, was less than the spillway, which is about 336 in the case of both basins. So on all of our houses, all of the footing drains were draining out at an elevation lower than what the basement elevation is, and lower than what the maximum of that pond could be. So if you look at all the houses 8, 9, 10, 11 down that way, all of those basements are elevated up well over the 336. They're all at 337 or so. And then if you look at house 6 and 7, those footing drains actually discharge, they should be discharged out toward the back there, so that they're all down, going to get closer to that 334 mark, is where they should be. And then that way, all of that water is there's no chance for that water to back up into those basements. And that was the reason that, like, lots 1 through 5, we've raised the basements, lowered the storm drainage, so that all of that storm drainage can discharge all of that water. So essentially what would have to happen is the water would have to get all the way up to the top of that basin. So you'd be over the 100-year storm mark, and then it's going to go through those emergency spillways before it backs up into the basements. So that was the reason for elevating those up as high as we did.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions, Dan?
Not this time.
Okay, thanks. Mark, any questions?
No questions at this time.
Okay. Neil, any questions?
Not at this time.
Dave, any questions?
No questions.
Rich?
No questions. Thank you.
And I don't have any questions for the applicant, but I do have a question for Shannon. Shannon, procedurally, if we were to determine this is a regulated non-significant activity, would we have to get an extension on a decision, or do we get additional time just with determining significance?
So, so the 65 days runs out on November 5th. And so the commission by November 5th either has to render a decision on the application or start a public hearing. So the public hearing, in order to meet statutory times, would have to start on November 3rd. We can't do that because there's not enough time to do all the notifications. So we're kind of in a position that the extension, if you determine tonight that it's not significant, then we don't technically need an extension perhaps until the next meeting. But if the commission determines that it's significant tonight, or the commission wants to wait until the November 3rd meeting, then we do need that extension this evening.
Okay, thank you, Shannon. That helps a lot.
Certainly.
So for the commission, I think the issue that we have to first address is whether we think this is a significant activity in terms of impact to the wetlands, or is it a regulated but non-significant activity? I think that there has been a lot of information provided. The majority of the development is outside of the regulated area. The only home that's within the regulated area is the lot number 11. So I think clearly, and we also, the commission needs to differentiate between significant public interest and significant wetland impact. So while I recognize that there is significant public interest, I would lean towards this being a regulated but non-significant wetland impact activity. So I'll use that as an opener on the dialogue as to where we think we are with determination on significance. So maybe we can just go around and get some feedback and thoughts to see if we are leaning towards a consensus on determining significance tonight. So Rich, do you want to share your thoughts on significant or non-significant?
I would agree with your assessment, Robert.
Okay, Dave, your thoughts on significance?
Yeah, I would agree as well that there's not a significant impact to wetlands, but it's probably a significant public interest.
Okay, Neil, I know that you're sort of coming in a little late on some of the information, so you could either weigh in or abstain.
Yeah, I would probably abstain at this point, since this is really my first meeting and first time seeing these plans. I am interested though in your comment about lot number 11 being within I think you said it was in a regulated area. So what distinguished that from the rest of the development?
In our wetland regulations are designed such, and Shannon, you can correct me if I'm wrong with it, we have statutory authority to oversee anything within the wetlands proper, but we also establish a buffer zone. So our commission regulates everything within 150 feet of a wetland or water course. So while lot number 11, the proposed house, is not in the wetlands, it is within the 150-foot regulated area.
Okay,
So
and the other houses are not.
That's correct. And Shannon, do you have one of the site plans that actually shows the?
Yeah, I've got to go back. Give me one sec, because I should be able to pull that up.
Yeah, because we've got a good plan that has the wetland shown, and then it has a red line of 150 feet.
Yeah, and
while
actually the
Shannon's-
presentation drawing, if you have it, Shannon, from the last meeting. I don't know
Yeah,
if you do.
I'm going back to, I think that's September 1st.
Yeah, and while Shannon is looking for that, Mark, maybe I'll move on to you on thoughts for significance.
I would say I'm kind of torn which way to go. I'm not as definite as other members of the commission. I give a little more thought, but I had a thought about which way I would go tonight, and I don't know if I totally agree with what you're saying, but I will think about it a little bit more. Thank you.
Sure. Well, that's why we're going around and seeking input in opinions. Ned, thoughts on significance?
I kind of do think it is a significant event, a project. I think the construction of the sedimentation basins are going to be within there. Let me ask a question. So the curved on the drawing we're looking at today, the dash 2 dot line, is that the 150-foot mark? Or what mark?
That's the 150 foot to the water course, but I'm
Okay.
not seeing the 150 foot to the upland review
Okay.
on this sheet. And
Yeah, I kept the handout that we had from the sidewalk, and it had a really nice red dotted line for the 150 foot regulated.
yeah,
area.
but that I don't think I got a PDF of that. So, or I don't have it here because it wasn't
Okay.
used. So that's,
All right, so then that's 150 foot from the water course. And yeah, you're right, I don't see it here.
there we go. There we go.
The baby.
Oh, yeah, perfect.
That's it.
So Shannon, can you use the little cursor to outline the 150 foot line to help with the visual?
Sure. Yeah, let me. Okay, so thank you everyone for your patience. Trying to find these things under pressure is always fun. All right, so just for orientation purposes, right, the house, we were just looking at this. It's the same site plan, just now it's in color. All right, the lot numbers are all here, 11, 10, 9, 8, and then the detention basin, 7, 6, and then 5 to 1 on the eastern side. So this is the water course that runs through the wetlands, and it runs from the south to the north. And then the blue line is the wetland boundary. That's the delineated wetland boundary by confirmed by David Lord. This first purple line, red line, pink line, whatever we're going to call it, is the 150 foot to the water course. And then this purple dashed line is 150 foot to the wetland. So the commission, as Mr. Eisner made reference to, regulates activities in the wetlands and water courses and regulates activities within the upland review area. And then there's a wetland off to this northeast corner, and this pink line in this corner delineates the 150 foot upland review in this corner as well. And I think so. All of the homes, this home lot 6 is just touching on the corner of the 150 foot upland area. And then this is not scrolling down for me. Again, as Mr. Eisner mentioned, it's the house on lot 11 is the only one that's completely in the 150 foot. And I believe this is closely located to where the existing barn is. We'd have to put the other plan on in order to see the barn footprint. And then these are the 2 detention basins. So.
Thank you, Shannon. That was very helpful.
Absolutely. Thank you for your patience.
So Ned, I think
yeah.
go ahead, Ned.
Yeah, that is very helpful. Thank you, Shannon. So, yeah, but so the excavation work that's going to need to be done for building the sedimentation ponds is completely within 150 foot area. So, I mean, I think we're looking at a lot of excavation, and I remember seeing the improvements that were made based on the original development plans, and I think they've, you know, made some improvements, but I still think that this is, you know, building 11 houses in a roadway is a significant project when you're right at the edge of the wetland. So I kind of do, I'm pretty steady in thinking that this is a significant project.
Okay, so I think the commission's pretty evenly split on, you know, regulated, non-significant and significant activity. So we'll probably need to have a motion on either way, and then try and address it that way. I'll just sort of revisit my thought in that clearly it's a regulated activity, but I think, and I don't, you know, I agree with you, Ned, in that the excavation work for the detention areas in the houses in the roadway, all of that would be a significant overall site activity. But I think even with that, the impact of the wetland, you know, I think could be insignificant. So I think, you know, actually, Shannon, I do have one question before we go to a vote. Is Neil a full or alternate, and do we need to determine if he's voting tonight or not?
So Neil is a full member, not an alternate. So and then Neil would need to state for the record whether or not he's had an opportunity to review the meeting information from September 1st, because this was tabled at the 22nd and October 6th. So, and I don't know, quite honestly, I don't even know that staff, I wasn't sure where this was going this evening. So I don't know that we've provided him all the information that he would need to be able to participate fully on this matter this evening. But
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The only thing I've seen are the presentation tonight and the maps you just put up.
And Neil, it's probably best for you to abstain from the vote then.
Yes.
Not having gone through the record. So given that we're pretty evenly split between regulated, non-significant and significant, if someone wants to pose a motion, we could get a second and then have a vote and discussion.
I'll ask that the motion be made in the affirmative, please. So, so that we can approach this, and then, so a yes is supporting it and a no is denying the motion. So just when you create your motion, just do it in the affirmative, please.
Good cue for us, Shannon. Thank you. And regardless of which motion comes forward, we can have a discussion. We'll just need a platform to call the vote on.
This is Rich. I have a question, procedural question. If we vote that it is a significant activity, then it would go to a public hearing. Is that the difference?
Yes.
Correct. So this, if it's a significant activity, then the matter has to be brought to a public hearing. And we will need the extension in time frame, and the public hearing would start in December. If it's non-significant, then a public hearing is not required. And then we can proceed accordingly, at least to the November meeting. And then if the commission still needs more time, the applicant can grant additional extensions up to an additional 65 days.
Thank you.
Certainly.
Thanks, Shannon. So, yep, pretty straightforward. If we vote for a significant activity, we would have an extension from we need to firm up the extension from the applicant and move to a public hearing.
Mr. Rich, I would make a motion that the project is a significant activity and a regulated but significant activity.
Thank you, Rich. Is there a second?
I'll second. Wait a minute. I thought you said it has to be in the affirmative.
It is. So he is.
Oh.
He's saying that he's saying it is a significant activity.
Okay.
So it's an
All right.
affirmative. So If you vote yes, you're agreeing it's a significant activity. And
Okay,
if you vote nay, then you're opposing. So yes.
all right, I understand. Thank you for the clarification. Okay, I will second the motion.
Okay, thanks, Ned. Okay, so we'll go around and again, if we're voting yes, it is to uphold it's a significant activity. A no is disagreeing that it is a significant activity. So Rich, we'll start with you. Yay or nay?
Yay.
Okay. Dave?
This is a very tough call. It seems in looking at the regs that significant activity would have a significant impact on wetlands, which it's a little bit harder to make that determination. But in section 6F, it says a public hearing can be required for activities that are significant or where the commission determines that a public hearing would be in the public interest. To me, it seems more in that latter category that I would support the call for.
So, sure. That's a yes.
So I guess that's a yes.
Okay,
Okay, so
Maybe for a different reason.
that's fine. Because the commission's made that determination before. It was discussed for 402 Farmington and it was discussed for Midpoint, the same logic.
okay, thank you, Dave. And Neil, we'll still need to see if you're a yay, nay, or abstain.
Yeah, I'll abstain. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark?
So if I say yes, that means it is significant, correct?
Yes, and if you wanted to add if you were headed that direction and you thought it was more because the public hearing would be in the public interest based on the regulation that Dave cited, you could also include that as your yay.
I would say I would agree with that there's a significant public benefit to have a public meeting. So I say yes, it is significant.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Ned, yay or nay?
I vote yes, it is significant.
Okay, and for the record, I am going to vote yes for the issue that Commissioner Fox raised, that it would be in the public interest, not solely for a significant activity. So Shannon, I think, or Sandy, we're good on the vote?
Yeah, we're good. I think we both got it. So we're set. Brian, if you could follow up either this evening or an email or tomorrow with the extension that will be required so that we can open the meeting at the December meeting, open the hearing at the December meeting.
Sounds good, Shannon. I will do that.
I appreciate it.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
everyone.
Yeah,
Thank you.
actually, Brian, before you go, I just want to make sure that we're clear on the record. So Shannon, our December meeting is, it looks like it would be December 1st.
December 1st.
So you said our 65 days runs out on November 5th.
Correct.
So if we have a 30-day extension, that would be sufficient to commence the hearing. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, we typically just, the granting of the extension can simply be worded to grant the extension to start the hearing on December 1st. And then,
Okay, thanks.
yeah, that's typically sufficient.
So Brian, for the record, can you affirm that?
Yes, we will. I will send Shannon a letter tomorrow or an email tomorrow with a letter stating that we'll grant the extension for the meeting to be a public hearing for December 1st.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Thank you.
Just if I could ask a question, in the possibility of inclement weather, right? Should there be some language about December 1st or the first meeting after that, or?
Oh, we can, yes. Yeah, Brian and I can work through that to the.
Yeah, we can say the next meeting in December. How does
Sure.
that work?
Perfect.
Okay.
Yes.
Thanks,
Thank
Neil.
you.
Thanks, Brian. Okay, so I think we're
Thank you.
good with this agenda item. We'll move on to new business number 2, Peter and Francesca Lowell, 99 Coppermine Road.
Okay, Mr. Chair, just if I may, for just a moment, there's a couple of people that have been posting question and answers in chat. And just for the record, that this matter, as you heard this evening, was not a public hearing this evening, so the commission cannot take any public comments. Actually, none of the matters this evening are a public hearing, and no public comments will be heard. The matter of 168, based on the vote of a significant project, the public hearing will be held in December, and public comments will be taken at that particular point. They can be sent in written ahead of time, or you can call in for the meeting and participate in that meeting on, right now it's scheduled for December 1st, barring inclement weather. So I just want to let everyone just clarify that, since there has been some comments, and we don't use the question and answer or the chat. Anything done for public comment needs to be done verbally during the meeting. So thank you.
Shannon, thanks for those comments for the public benefit. Mr. Lowell?
Yes, hi, Jim. You got it, Jim?
Okay, yes. Good evening, Mr. Chairman. This is Jim Rotundo. I'm a licensed professional engineer with Godfrey Hoffman Hodge. As you can see, Mr. Peter Lowell, the applicant and owner, is also on the meeting. Unless you'd like me to review the proposal which we had presented previously, we'd be happy to just answer any questions from the commission, anything that came up on the site walk. However, I would just like to recap a couple items Mr. Lowell informed me that were discussed during the site walk. Mr. Lowell would like to install a U-shaped driveway in the front of the house, as well as a jacuzzi and patio along the back of the house. If that's acceptable to the commission, we would just like to include these items on final plans should the application be approved.
Okay, so we'll go around and see if there are any questions from the commission members. Ned, I'll start with you first. Any questions?
Just on that recent comment, so I'm looking at C-10, so the sheet number on the plan. So right now you have just a straight driveway that's going into the garage, and I was at the site plan, at the site meeting. And I know they're switching the driveway to the other side of the property from where it is now, which is, I think, a good thing, because it gets it farther away from the pond. But what is his intentions on making this a U-shaped driveway?
Peter, can you elaborate on that?
Yes.
please?
Can you hear me? I'm sorry.
Yes,
Yeah,
I can hear you.
I explained it to Bruce when he was there, and he said he checked from the street, the line of sight, and he said it looked fine. All they want to do is just, if you remember that tree that's in the front, it's going to just go up the driveway where it is going into the garage, just come in front of the house and come straight down again. It's actually going to be ending before where the old driveway is. So it's not going to come past like by the wall or anything like that. That won't be touched. Does that make sense? What I'm saying?
Does that tree, Mr. Lowell, will that tree remain? So the tree, the plan is showing on the screen right now, and it shows a
Yes.
10-inch Norway maple. Are you
Yes,
going to come to
that's-
the left or to the right of that?
Looking from the street to the house, it's going to come around the left of it.
So on this side, so between the tree and the wall?
Between the tree and before the driveway, correct?
Well, in the stone wall that's there in the.
Yes,
right
in the
of way.
stone wall. Yeah, the stone walls first, then there's the driveway, then there's some grass, and then there's the tree.
Okay,
Okay.
so it's gonna come.
All right, so you're gonna have two entrances on the streets for the U, so then that U will, like the hand is going.
It's the main thing is, Mike, the way I want to do it is I want to go in through the garage way and just to come back out on the street through the other side. Again, the actual where it is, I'm gonna wait until we actually have the trees cleared and see how the plan looks. You know what I mean? I mean, I don't want to I'm not looking for anything really big, just like a U. So we could just come in and don't have to back out into the street. I just want to go forward into the street, so I'm not backing out into traffic. That's the reason for the U shape.
Okay. No, I think most of my questions were answered at the site meeting. I know we went over, there's several large dead trees,
Yeah,
several good trees that are in the way of the house.
correct.
So they're
That's the
gonna
only
be
things I'm
moved.
taking down. That's the only,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna touch anything on the borders or anything like that. And just
Yeah.
in that open area in the back looking from the street on the right-hand side. Where we
Maybe,
talked about.
I don't think it needs to be part of the agreement or anything, but just maybe some consideration for planting some trees, you know.
Oh, definitely, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
like I says, I just want to get those really big trees out of the way now, and then I will plant in the future. I just don't want to have the house built and all of a sudden one of them it falls down on top of the house. So
No,
my
there were
concern is that.
definitely some dead trees there that
Yeah.
had to be
Yeah.
taken out.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Ned,
Mark?
Mr. Chair, I'm gonna interrupt real quick. Ned, since not everyone was able to make the site walk, you made reference to that a number of your questions had been answered during the site walk. Would you mind elaborating so that the rest of the commission has the benefit of that information?
No, we were getting clarification on like the tree line, and you know that there's the section that kind of where he's going to continue the line out back into the kind of have an L shape coming
The-
off the house. Yeah,
this
that area
area?
there.
Okay.
That was going to be cleared, and I see, that still leaving for between the wetland areas, and he seemed to be putting a decent buffer in there.
Okay,
And that was mostly it.
okay. Thank you for clarifying.
Okay. And the movement of the driveway, I want to make sure that we understood where the movement of the reason the driveway was being moved over. And it made sense to me, and that, it's always
Yeah.
best to keep the driveway farther away from the pond.
Okay, thank you.
Mark, do you have any questions?
Well, I have a question for Shannon, and thank you for bringing that up. I wasn't able to attend the sidewalk, but one of my concerns was the coverage, the wooded coverage near the wetlands. And hearing Ned speak, it seems like that is being addressed, and it won't impact that watercourse in a substantial way. Now, Shannon, I have a question for you. There was one site we went to that somebody did two cuts on Talcott Notch, I believe, did two cuts on a road. It's not significant for me, for this commission, but is two cuts into a road allowed, or was that just for that particular road?
No, it is allowed with review of the Engineering and Public Works Department. So as part of a curb cut permit is needed with the town. And so that it'll be evaluated again at the time of the building permit. Just to ensure such things as site distance, make sure it's not conflicting with another driveway across the street, things of that nature. So yeah, it will receive further evaluation for different reasons from a town standpoint.
I figure that's more of a TPZ or a town ordinance or whatever, but I have no further questions.
Okay.
Neil, do you have any questions?
Yeah, just one. I noticed on Sunday morning, the well cap there, are you going to be using that well? Is it still functional, or will there be other drillings?
No, it has city water, so we are not going to use that. No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dave, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I just wanted to verify that a conservation easement would be placed upon, at a minimum, the wetland area, but maybe a portion of that buffer as shown.
And Peter, do you want to address that? We have a recommendation from the town staff that the commission should consider a conservation easement, which would restrict the use of the area for the limit of clearing, whereas Commissioner Fox said at least a wetland. Are you agreeable to a conservation easement?
Sorry for my negligence, but what exactly is it? What does he want me to do exactly? What do you mean by a conservation easement? I'm sorry.
Yeah, conservation easement would be something that's noted on the plan and recorded on the land records where you're agreeing that, that portion of the property would not be subject to clearing of trees, grading of soils, installation of anything without approval from the town, and that's town council, correct, Shannon?
Correct. So the easement is recorded on the land records, and then it runs with the land and the chain of title. And it's basically a commitment to leave that area, the wetland, and agreed to buffer adjacent to it in its natural state and undisturbed. A commitment, for the wetland, you can't anyhow, but ideally the commission typically likes to see a buffer adjacent to that wetland. So folks, and not necessarily yourself, Mr. Lowell, but when you choose to sell the house, folks aren't always attentive to these things, and we very, very regularly find yard clippings and brush and debris, etc., flower pots and things of that nature being just dumped into the wetland areas.
No, I'm fine. I'm sorry. I'm fine with that 30-foot buffer that we have. Anything in there I will not touch. The only thing, like Bruce explained to me when I was there, I mean, any down trees, there's one huge tree that I showed him that's dead and rotting. So I was told X if I could just pull that one out, but everything else, he said, we'll just cut it down, leave it flat the way it is. I will not disturb it. I have no problem to that.
Yeah, and that's fairly standard. The easement language allows for maintenance. Typically, all it's required is a call to our office, and either someone from our office or the tree warden will come out, confirm that, in fact, the tree is dead or dying and does need to be removed, and you'll be provided the green light to go ahead and take it down. And typically those requests are handled within 1 business day.
Okay. So before I even touch that one that we talked about, I'll still check with you again, correct?
Well, no, because that'll be done, since you've already spoken with Bruce, you're fine. And it'll be done part of the construction of the home while you have everything mobilized. So we're talking, once you have your CO and the easements in place.
Okay, I'm fine with that. That's fine. Thank you.
Certainly.
Dave, did you have other questions?
No, I guess just to clarify, so the entire wooded area would be the conservation easement with the 30-foot buffer.
So it's 30 feet on this side and 15 on
on
the other side. So, the commission can decide. You can go 15 and 15 if you wanted to allow some flexibility. That's, ultimately it's the commission's choice, but it sounds like the applicant's agreeable.
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine with the flags, the mark right now at the 30. I'm fine with that. I have no problem at all. That's all I need, what I have on that. That's great.
Okay, thank you. No, nothing else, Robert.
Rich, any questions?
The only question I have is the location of the was it a jacuzzi tub? There was some other development beside the driveway that.
Yeah, the jacuzzi, the reason why is I put it as furthest away from the wetlands. If you're looking from the street to the house, it's going to be in the far corner where it's going to start. I'm going to put a cement plate right down on the ground over there. But like I said, it'll be on the far right of the house, which is the furthest point from the wetlands.
You're thinking over here?
I think behind the garage.
Or you're behind?
I think behind the garage, when you were talking at the field, you said it was like,
So
that corner of the house. Yeah.
Right, behind that corner right there. Yes, that corner going over towards, well, looking at it this way, towards the left. Yes, towards my neighbor. That spot right there, which is the. Yep, it'll start at that corner and.
Got it.
Okay, that's the only question I had. I'm good. Thank you.
Thanks, Rich. And I have one question, Peter, in addition to conservation easement, another standard condition that we put on a lot of the approvals is to use an integrated pest management for maintenance of lawn, and that is just low impact fertilizers, natural organic fertilizers versus synthetic.
No problem.
Fertilizers.
No problem. I'm fine with that.
Okay, thank you for that
Okay.
feedback. So I think we're ready to determine significance. Is there anyone, I think that, it's a lot of record. Well, it wasn't at the site walk. There is a reasonable separating distance between the proposed development and the wetlands. There will be a conservation easement potentially included if we were to move on this. So I think it would be a regulated, non-significant activity.
Yeah, I would make that motion, and just would also add that this is, just one house. I mean, there was previously a house in more or less the similar location of the existing house. So the change in use is, I think, very limited.
Thank you, Ned.
This
Is
is
there a
Rich.
second?
I'll second that.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying, well, before we call the vote, Shannon, in terms of Neil's action, he was at the site walk, heard tonight's presentation. Is that sufficient to vote?
It is, I believe he had additional information regarding this as well. So, but Mr. Kelsey can certainly, if he feels he's well versed on this application, then I believe he would be eligible for voting.
Okay.
Yes,
great.
and I
Thanks.
can confirm, I reviewed the application, I was at the site walk, and I reviewed the minutes of I think it was the October 6th meeting where this was discussed.
Correct.
Okay, thanks, Neil. Thanks for that clarification. So with that input, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, then the motion on significance carries. On the motion on non-significant activity carries.
Thank you, gentlemen.
So now we can vote on the application. We could vote tonight, or we could wait for additional information. It seems pretty straightforward. We do have a recommendation from staff on 3 clarifications for the soil and erosion control. A recommendation on a conservation easement. So we'd have to decide if we would just want 15 feet from the wetland markers or 15 feet and 30 feet as discussed. And then the last was including an integrated pest management for property maintenance. Is there someone that would want to make a motion similar to that?
I'm a little worried about the 15 and 30 because that line there is kind of very irregular. I don't know. I don't know if we should just keep it 15 feet all the way around, or would that be simpler? I guess
Yeah, I'm happy with where the markers, I think, are 30. If that's what it is, wherever the markers are, I'm fine. I don't need
Okay.
to get more land. That's fine. I have no problem with that.
all right.
And I think we have them
Shannon?
at 30.
Does it
I
matter?
like 30.
All right. So go with 15 and 30 the way the dimensions are shown on the plan.
Mr. Stach, and I understand what you're saying, and whether or not, as we're looking at this clearing limit, and of course I wasn't out at the site, so I don't know if the marker in the field at this corner is exactly 30 feet off that wetland, or if it's 20 or 25, I don't know. Mr. Rotundo is on the phone. I don't know, your firm did the stakeout. I don't know if you have better information with respect to that and where those flagging points were, so that
For the record, this is Jim Rotundo. That corner area where you're referring to there, where it transitions from the 15 to 30, is about 20 feet off that. I believe it's wetland flag number 7.
Okay.
So as it turns that corner there, it transitions from 15 to 30. That's about 20 feet at that point.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification. So that's, I think 15 feet would certainly provide a suitable buffer and would keep, our general concerns of yard waste, debris, plant matter, et cetera, that's not supposed to be in the wetlands would be typically sufficient for keeping that out. would also allow some flexibility on that west side, not only for Mr. Lowell, but any future owners. But that's my 2 cents on it.
Yeah, and Ned, if you wanted to clarify it as a minimum of 15 feet, that would allow the engineer to smooth out the line, because I agree with you that it's easier if you have a, a smooth line,
Yeah,
whether
yeah.
it's straight or
That-
some geometry.
That's a good suggestion. So we'll make the motion with a minimum of 15 feet. And then they could balance that out, with the town as the clearing being done. Okay, and with the suggestions that were in the town's consideration. We could,
Yep, so that would be the three soil and erosion
yeah,
control.
we
and
didn't
IPM.
discuss, yes, the only thing is I see here, we didn't discuss a proposed footing drain. It was asked that it be relocated. Was that done on this plan, or is that still looking to have that revised?
I,
It was just the ENS.
yeah, I think that may have been an engineering comment, so we can just say, add in, satisfy engineering comments, the satisfaction of
Okay.
town staff, it would be fine. I'm not exactly
Okay.
sure where that last ended. I think this might be fine as shown.
Okay. Yeah, so that and the integrated pest managements. Okay,
Thank
so
you, Ned.
that's my motion.
Is there a second?
Was that to?
Piece it all together.
Yeah, it is. Too.
Is there a
This is
second?
Rich. I'll second it.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Happy building.
Thanks.
So this will move us on to item 3 under new business. Ellery Monorat, lot 8980 Twin Ponds Road.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name is Robert Reeve. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Attorney Reeve, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm with the firm of Scully Nixon Reeve at 79 Main Street in Unionville, and we represent the owner and the applicant, Hallery Monorat, who is also on the call. Joining me in the presentation tonight will be Bill Aston, a professional engineer with Buck and Buck, who prepared the plan that's in front of you. The site's also been evaluated by Eric Davison, who's a soil scientist, wetlands biologist, wetlands scientist with Davison Engineering. You've got a couple of reports from Eric in the file. I was hoping he'd be able to join us. He did have another meeting tonight. He did not know how long it was going to go. I don't believe he's on the call, but since this is the first meeting, we'll get to see you again, and I'm sure he'll be able to join us then. The proposal is to construct a single-family home on an approved and vacant subdivision lot. It's on the southeast corner at the intersection of Coppermine Road and Twin Ponds Drive. And this lot was approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission way back in 1955, which was well before the adoption of the inland wetlands statute at the state level or inland wetlands regulations here in Farmington. The town does assess the lot as a vacant buildable lot for tax purposes. It's the rear portion of the lot. We're to the right on the map where Shannon is putting, I guess it's her hand there, where she's circling it. That's the wetland area. The buildable portion, the upland portion of the lot is to the left or to the west, which has its frontage on Twin Ponds Road, or Twin Ponds Drive, excuse me. So Bill Aston and myself met with Bruce and Shannon back in July. And at that time, we were showing them a different plan. We had the house further back. We had a full basement, a longer driveway. There were certainly more impacts to the wetlands from that. And they encouraged us to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals and to seek a variance so that we could pull the house closer to Twin Ponds Drive. The building line was normally 50 feet. We were approved last month for a variance so that we can build the front of the house to within 25 feet from the street line on Twin Ponds Drive, which certainly gets the house further away from the wetlands, reduces the impact. The house will connect to public water and sewer. The only direct wetland impact is going to be a temporary disturbance along Coppermine Road where Shannon has her hand now. And that's for the water line, to get the water line to the site. And the impact in the upland review area is going to be to clear and to grade for the home site. If you had a chance to look at Eric Davidson's second letter, that's my dog. If you hear something scratching there, he talked about three options. Hi, Kirby. He talked about three options that were studied for the site, and this is really the least impactful of the three different options that Bill and Hallery had looked at. So with that, I'll ask Bill to give you some of the details of the site plan. Thank you.
Thank you,
Well,
Attorney.
hello, I'm Bill Aston from Buck and Buck Engineers. Our office is in West Hartford, and I live in Farmington here. I have been working on this lot since 2003 under the previous owner. The wetlands was flagged back then, and we had it reflagged by Eric this spring. We had topo taken on the lot by Brian Deno on an assumed datum. So just to confuse things, it's not anywhere near the datum across the street. But our house is located, as Bob said, 26 feet from the edge of, from the right of way, giving us a 1 foot buffer in the stakeout. We are proposing a house with a crawl space at elevation 99, which is basically at existing grade and about 6 inches above the low point of the road. We will have a drive-in garage at about 8 inches above that. We'll have a 4 foot rise to get to the first floor in the garage. And then correspondingly outside, we have a sidewalk sloping up to the front door, which is also 4 feet above the entrance to the garage. We are grading out in the front of the house to limit the amount of exposed foundation. In the rear of the house, we have dropped the grade approximately 2 feet, so that at the house, we are grading up about 2 feet from the edge of the wetlands. And the back portion of the house will have quite a bit of exposed foundation or a knee wall below the proposed house, which is going to be a modular house, as I understand. The garage and the bonus area on the north end will be stick framed, but the main portion of the house, the 27 by 47 house, will be built as a modular house. I have reviewed Bruce's comments, and I know he's asking for a test pit in the house area, but since the crawl space is basically at grade, I really don't see what we need to do the test pit for. We will, if Bruce really wants it, but I know we're going to be above groundwater. Our house has a gravity drain below the crawl space that discharges to an existing ditch at the northwest corner of the property. And then it flows through 2 culverts under Twin Pond Road over toward the ponds, but it doesn't really make it into the ponds. It flows along the road to another culvert that goes under and discharges onto the Calco site. We are including a backwater valve on that foundation drain, and also a sump pump in the corner for the rare occasion that groundwater or floodwater may come up above the crawl space. But as I said, the crawl space is 6 inches above the low point on Twin Ponds. So we don't expect any flooding of the basement or crawl space. It's not a basement, it's about a 4.5 foot high crawl space. There is a deck on the back of the house that's shown on the plan. And we are basically clearing to the wetlands line on the east side of the house. We are protecting that with a silt fence with a backup of the straw wattle along that line, and then along the line against the ditch on the north side. I have sent Bruce a detail of the crossing with the proposed trench detail, and we will just be, our plan is to bring the water main down along the road and then start working from the south side and then excavate across the ditch in wetlands as we go, backfill. And so we don't have to go back and forth through that area with equipment. And we are going to replace the surface material in that area with river jack stone rather than topsoil. So it will be automatically, it won't erode. And you can see that if you read, we're not going to let them place any material during construction in the wetlands. They have to place it outside. And we're providing a hay bale dewatering area for the pump outside of the wetlands so that they can dewater the excavation across the wetlands if they need it. I think that highlights the plan. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you. Attorney Reeve, anything else, or should we go around and take questions from the
I
commission?
don't think so. I don't think Eric made it. So at this point, that's all we have to present.
Okay, thank you. We'll go around. Rich, do you have any questions?
And just my question is the so you're proposing to clear the vegetation up to the wetland limit? Is that what I heard?
That is correct.
Okay, that's the only question I had. Thank you.
Dave, any questions?
What are the plans to handle roof runoff?
We will be putting roof leaders at the corners of the house, and will just be surface runoff toward the wetlands. With splash pads at the corners.
The sump pump discharge point, I would imagine there's going to need to be some riprap or up spreader or something placed at that location.
I haven't shown that at the present, but we will put some riprap at the end of that, just like the water main crossing.
That's all I have right now.
Thanks, Dave.
Nice job,
Neil,
Dave.
Neil, do you have any questions?
No, I don't.
Mark, do you have any questions?
No questions.
Ned, any questions?
Yeah, so the water service comes in from Copper Mine Road. And I'm not seeing where the sewer service connects.
The sewer service connects at the south west corner. There was a lateral left right at the corner of the lot. It's actually in front of the neighbor's lot. So we go out to the street and then connect right there where the handprint's going.
Okay. So there's sewer service on Twin Pines Drive, but no water service?
That is correct. The water stops halfway across our lot.
Okay. And so I'm not sure what's going to happen with this swale where you have that water going through. Is the swale going to continue down to the wetlands?
The swale actually is a man-made swale that sort of drains the wetlands, 0.5% slope from the culverts at Twin Pond Roads, and it extends back maybe about 200 feet into the wetlands. And it's a ditch that's about 2 to 3 feet wide and about a foot deep. And it's dug, and it looks like they just placed the material along the side closest to Copper Mine Road when they.
Okay. And that culvert, does it go under Twin Ponds Drive to the pond, or does it go the other way across Copper Mine?
It goes under Twin Pond Drive, but it connects to a ditch along the side of Copper Mine Road, which is downstream of the pond. It looks like there's a stone dam as the north end of the ponds.
Okay.
It's right, it's over where my writing is. It's not, we didn't extend the plan over that way.
Okay.
And
And
that culvert was put in when they put the new sewers in. It was doubled in size from what was there before.
okay. Is there any fill being brought in to try and to raise this elevation, or are these elevations pretty close to what's out there?
There will be fill brought in to bring up the front yard of the house. I'm not sure of the volume at the present time.
Okay.
There's really the only excavation will be to get through any unsuitable material that's on the top below the crawl space.
Okay, and so you're gonna have a sump pump, so I'm guessing that's at the low corner of like the inside side of the foundation wall, in case water builds up inside that?
There is a sump in that corner, in the northwest corner of the crawl space, right in back of the garage.
Okay.
And that has a gravity drain that drains through it with a backwater valve that if the water in the ditch backs up, it will close. And then the sump pump, if the groundwater continues to come up, the sump pump would come on and discharge it to the back toward the wetlands.
Okay. And then there's gonna be a separate, you have 4-inch foundation drain, and so that'll be around the edges of the foundation, and that's gonna drain to kind of close to where the culvert comes out of the.
That is correct.
Okay.
And that's inside the foundation wall. It's right under the crawl space slab.
Okay. I'll just say I do have some concerns because I live around the corner and I'm driving this all the time, and it's not uncommon for me to see a lot of ponding water, in this vicinity of the house. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's more towards closer to the wetland area, and maybe I'm seeing more of the water in the swale area, but every time I look at it, after a good rain, it looks like that water is spreading out a lot more, but I think we'll have to take a look at it and see how things look out there. But that's all I have for questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Ned. I do have a question, point of clarification, just on the positioning of the water service connection. There's no alternative around crossing that wetland or that ditch, correct? Because it runs the entire length of the roadway.
The 150 foot is pretty much the maximum desired length for a water service. And that's exactly what we've got.
Okay, so if there's really not an alternative, then I think the construction schedule on when that work is done and what's done to restore the area is going to be important as we move forward. I would encourage the applicant to acquiesce to the request from the town staff to do a test pit where the building is. That will probably expedite our ability to act on the application. And then I think, moving forward, we typically, the commission typically doesn't approve clearing all the way to the edge of the wetland. They recognize that there's not a lot of available building space, but I think it would be good to look at a minimum buffer area or conservation area beyond the wetland itself. And then the last item that I would raise just for consideration is having a conservation easement mark where that buffer area is, and then also be willing to use an integrated pest management system. So more comments than questions. So with that, I think the commission has raised all the issues we have. It would be appropriate to accept the application and then determine whether we want to do a site walk on the property. Shannon, we need a motion to accept, correct?
Correct. Yes, please.
Okay. Is there a motion to accept the application?
Dave will move that.
Thank you, Dave. Is there a second?
Aye.
Thanks, Mark. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. So we should decide if we want to do a site walk of the property. I'll put that out as an open item for the commission to chat about.
This is Ned. I think based on the construction is so close to the wetland limit itself. Looks like almost everything is in 150-foot upland. And we have a drainage swale on the north end of the property. It's just, I think we really need to look at this.
Thanks, Ned.
So I
Any
would
other
vote for
thoughts?
Site.
Yeah, I would vote to have a site walk, go back to Coppermine for a third time.
Okay, I would concur. Any preference on, Shannon, I'm assuming it's Saturday, the 23rd or Sunday, the 24th that you're identifying?
Right. So that would be this weekend. Typically, it's up to the commission. We could do it this weekend. The following weekend is Halloween weekend, but it's the 30th and 31st, but it puts it right before the meeting. So it would be the weekend prior to the meeting on November 3rd. Mr. Sear has indicated he's available either. So whatever the commission's preference is fine. But Saturday or Sunday at 8:30.
Ed, what's the
Shannon.
football schedule?
Yeah, what's football schedule?
This is Bruce here. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah,
Yes,
go
please.
ahead.
We should throw that back at Bill Aston too, to see if he can have that. If you guys want the house located on the property, he'll have to coordinate that with the surveyor to have him do that. So that may hold the sidewalk back a little bit.
Good point, Bruce. Thank you. Bill, is it feasible to get the property, the house and pertinent features staked for this weekend?
I don't think we could get a surveyor out there for this weekend. I could pull ties off the wetlands flag and get it approximate for you for this weekend. But if you want the real actual location, I think you'd have to put it off.
Yeah, I don't think it would have to be exact. I think if we had, within a few feet of where the house corners are, that'd be more than fine.
Yeah, because all the flags are there and they're all numbered. We can, I can put some stakes in on at least on the back corners.
Is the commission good with that?
This is Dave. I'll be out of town this weekend, but that's better for anybody. That's fine.
This is Mark. I think next weekend, not the weekend of Halloween, would be a better one for me.
Okay, so we're looking at the 30th and 31st then.
It's always scary to go site walking with you, with the members of the staff, the commission. So it doesn't matter to me which weekend it is.
And we always have so much fun on Coppermine.
I'm good on either the 30 or 31st.
How's everybody else? 30th or 30?
Yeah,
Both of those are fine with me, Dave.
both, yeah, they're both fine.
Fine with me, Rich.
Okay. Mr. Aston, will you be able to join the commission for the site walk? And do you have a preference on date?
I'd rather do it on the Saturday morning than the Sunday morning. But I can do it Sunday morning if that's what everybody else wants.
Yeah, I actually prefer Saturday. It just makes it a little easier for other things on Sunday.
Okay. Saturday, October 30th at 8:30 a.m.
And then, Bill, you can work with the town staff on what we'd like to have staked.
Yes. And I'll probably have the test hole dug by then. I don't have to go down too far.
Great.
Just a clarification, please, Mr. Chairman. The
Yes.
markings of the wetland, that was done recently, or is that from an older plan?
No,
That's recent.
It's recent, okay.
Yeah.
Thank
I
you.
believe it was in May, I believe. Got that report from Mr. Davison here.
yeah, it's right
Yeah.
here. I've got it.
Yeah, May
Okay.
27th, 2021.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Okay, so I think we're all set then with item 3.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just one small point of clarification. Bill referred to some man-made changes along the ditch. Hallery Monorat's only owned this property for since the beginning of this year, so those changes were not made under her period of ownership.
Thank you, Attorney Reed.
Thank you all.
Okay, see those of you that can make the site walk on the 30th. Okay,
Alrighty.
move on to, we're all set, Shannon?
Yes, sir, we are.
Okay, move on to item 4 under new business, plant 17, 1179 Farmington Ave.
Correct. Yep. They're just continuing to implement some of the recommendations that George Logan had for the fall seasonal closeout for the property and really to get things stabilized. So there was some knotweed removal, it wasn't ragweed, mugwort removal, and then the flagging and identifying of all the plants so that they could then come through and mow. I believe Bill Galsky indicated they're going to be mowing, I think, this coming week. So things are continuing to move along with respect to the far eastern edge of the property. Their engineer has just been tied up with other matters, which we've kind of seen. I'm sure you folks have seen, no matter what you're doing. So that plan should be coming. Obviously, they're not doing anything out there until the plan comes before you for your review anyway. So when they're ready, it'll come in. But for now, we're coming into winter. The site's gonna just continue to hold in a stabilization pattern, and then we'll be looking at things in the spring to see where our amphibians are breeding. So that's it for an update on that particular parcel.
Okay, thanks, Shannon. And I'll just, Attorney Reeve, you're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting. I just want to make sure that you or your client doesn't have a question for the commission.
No, I don't think we do. I think we're good.
Oh, okay. No, you're welcome to stay logged on. I just wanted to make sure that if you had a
Okay,
question for us.
no,
we give you that
no, I was
opportunity.
just gonna listen to what was gonna happen, but I did mute myself and stop the video, so that's why you're still saying me, but thank you.
Perfectly fine. It's a public meeting.
Yep.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, yep.
Okay, moving on to old business, JRF management.
Yes, so staff is still muscling through getting a draft motion put together. It will be done by the end of this week, or it will be a lengthy bit of homework for me on the weekend, but it will be done here within the next few business days so that it can be distributed to all parties. We did receive an extension from Robin Pearson on behalf of the applicant for the decision to be made in at the November meeting. You'll recall there was somewhat of a consensus that they really wanted this as well, so that the full complement of the commission that had participated in the meetings could vote on this. I also have spoken to Attorney DeCrescenzo. I almost said Reeve. Attorney DeCrescenzo. And Mr. Kelsey will be eligible to vote should he be able to review the record and listen to the meeting. So that's another reason for delaying. It would give Mr. Kelsey an opportunity to come up to speed and review the documentation in that meeting information, and then he would be considered eligible to vote if he felt that he could do so. So that's the status. It will be plan on it being actively discussed at the November 3rd meeting.
And
Thanks,
Shannon, which meeting was this discussed that I should review the recording of? You can
The
shoot me an
hearing
email.
was September 22nd. So the hearing opened and closed on September 22nd, and it was the
Okay.
first item on the agenda. And I will also get you the plans and pertinent narrative and wetland report.
Okay, thank you.
And Neil, because of the amount of documentation for this application, there's a SharePoint site. So Shannon, you'll have to provide that as well, correct?
Correct, yes, yeah, all the documents. So rather than bombarding and bogging down your email with some of these larger applications, we do use a SharePoint link. So I'll get all
I
that.
appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Any other questions from the commission on this application?
Do we need
Okay,
a
great.
motion to extend or
Uh,
a table?
no,
or-
because it was an old business, and so it's just going to continue to table till you're ready to discuss it, and we have the extension was granted. So we're fine, but thank you for checking.
Shannon, Bruce, and Sandy, thank you. I know this application has a lot of information, a lot of work for you all. So we appreciate all of the updates and the continued great work you're doing. So thanks, and look forward to the updates for the November meeting.
Thank you.
And so we can, maybe we'll jump back to, well, we'll do the minutes and then we'll go back to election of officers.
Okay. Well, I do have a planner's report item.
Oh, yes.
Sorry, so we can do it in
Please-
any
please
order.
proceed. Yep, no, please
Okay.
proceed, Shannon.
Okay, so planners report, I have something with respect to Miss Porter's. And this is really, so this is a reminder for folks. In April, you'll recall Miss Porter's was in for the Sarah Lane project. And as part of that, there was rework in the parking lot, which anyone that's up and down Garden Street would have seen being completed over the course of the summer, as well as the installation of detention and infiltration galleys and a rework of the drainage system, which ultimately outlets to a surface detention pond that's located here on the bottom portion of the page. And this detention pond is, it was discussed during the meeting, and I've got the meeting minutes here as well, but it was discussed during the meeting that some maintenance work needed to be done on this pond. And we talked about, since this construction was going to be going on and there was likely going to be some silt and sedimentation, get all the construction finished and then come back and work on this pond really afterwards. So they're planning on doing it during the December school break when the kids are out of school. It'll also give an opportunity for some of the vegetation to die back and the ground to firm up. So what they're looking at doing is removing some of the sedimentation that's just naturally occurred in this pond area. We're looking to create a small forebay. They did discover, which was not found on the survey, and that's really here on this upper page. On the survey, they never did show an outlet for the pond. So they were able to find the outlet and confirm there is an outlet pipe. So that's going to get opened up. And then once they finish with all this, then there'll be some replanting and revegetation around this area. So this is an update. It's a reminder. Bruce and I are going to be meeting with Porter's staff in the next week or so, and some of their contractors, because of course the contractors wanted clarification and wanted to make sure that all the i's were dotted and t's were crossed regarding this. So I just bringing this back to everyone's forefront. And this is the meeting minutes from the April, I believe it was April 7th meeting, that we talked about doing maintenance on the wetland detention basin and incorporating maintenance to the existing system in this project. And so that this feature can continue to be maintained, and then providing some type of forebay in there. So that's what they're going to be working on. Obviously, if there's any questions, I'll still provide, Bruce or I'll provide updates as we go along. But if there's any questions or concerns, I'm happy to address any of those at this particular point.
Thank you, Shannon. Anyone have questions for Shannon?
No. Okay.
Questions?
All right. And then the only other thing for this evening is the Khakiwick Conference. It is virtual this year. It is a Saturday, November 6th. And I think it runs roughly from is either 8:30 or 9 o'clock till about 2:30 in the afternoon. So I can forward this out to all of you. I believe it was included in some of the information that Bruce sent for the meeting, but you can check the links. If you go to khakiwick.org, it gives you the full information. But as members of the commission, if you are interested in attending, then the town will pay for your attendance and your registration fee. So folks just need to let us know, since we're coming real close on this, in order for us to get the registrations processed and everybody in. You really should let us know, let's say by Monday of next week, so that we can get all the documents processed and registrants in. Mr. Hannon has indicated that he plans on attending. So anyone else, if you're interested, just let Bruce or myself know, and we'll get you added to the registration list and take care of getting the registration completed for you.
Thank you,
And
Shannon.
that's it. Yeah, that's it regarding that matter.
Okay,
And that's it for planner's report. I don't have anything else.
thank you. So Shannon said if anyone should let staff know, and we'll go from there. So move on to approval of the minutes for October 6th. Is there a motion to approve?
So move, Statchen.
Thanks, Ned. Is there a second?
Second by Dave.
Thanks, Dave. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'll abstain since I was not there.
Thanks, Neil. Motion carries. So we will go back to the top of the agenda for the election of officers. Shannon, do you have any guidance for us?
So yes, I can take the lead, and we would be looking for a nomination for a chair. Also, so the bylaws suggest that the election needs to take place prior to the end of October, which obviously that's why it's on the agenda. If the commission prefers, it can be postponed to the first meeting in November, if that's what you folks choose. Otherwise, the first order of business would be to take a nomination for chair. I need a nomination in a second, and then any other nominations, and then we would vote.
This is Ned. Just Bob, or has anybody had any discussion with Mr. Hammond about whether you wanted to continue, or? I know he's got he might be in retirement mind.
Well, he's not here, so.
Right. Of course,
If you're
that's how a
not here, you get
lot
nominated.
of positions are
Perfect time to elect.
Well, yeah, exactly.
So that's, like I said, if there's a thought, I've had some conversations, but I don't, he did not specifically say yes to go ahead and nominate him. So I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that in his absence, me personally. So that's,
Well,
we
just
can
myself
certainly wait.
speaking, I'm certainly satisfied with the officers alignment that are we currently using. But I don't, it's kind of hard to do that if we don't really know what Bob's feelings are.
Okay.
What do you think, Mr. Eisner?
I would agree. I think Bob does a great job, but it would be good in light of his, recent retirement to know what his thoughts are.
That's fair. That's fine. There's really no harm in pushing this to November. So we'll do that, and we'll do the same, particularly because I think the agenda is going to be fairly light in November. So we'll take care of the other matters. We'll pop this at the bottom of the agenda and address it at the November meeting. That's fine.
And Shannon, once the vote is taken, what's the effective date of the new slate of officers?
It's immediate.
Okay.
Yeah, for this commission, since you're appointed, then all the appointed commissions, I believe, well, not all of them. They all have different dates, just to keep us staff on our toes. But for you folks, it's an immediate effective date.
Okay. Thanks
So,
for the clarification.
certainly.
Okay, so we can ponder. We'll table this to the next meeting. And
Yes.
so with that, we will adjourn the meeting at 8:54 and open the Conservation Commission agenda, or open the Conservation Commission meeting at 8:54.
Okay,
Land
8:54.
acquisition
We had
report.
land acquisition, and Ned, do you have an
Well,
update?
I did go to the meeting. Here, I have a question though. Well, no, this is a public meeting, so when we go into executive session to discuss anything, I can't report that, obviously.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
I
Yep,
mean,
correct.
that's
So it's
basically
a-
what we do. We go into executive session pretty quick, so I don't know. There's really not much.
Okay. That's fine. That's fine. Just sometimes there's other things, and if there are, then that's fine, and those can be
Okay.
shared. But you're correct. If it's executive session, then it should not be shared at any point. So you're correct with
Especially
that.
meetings on the internet, so.
Well, yeah, regardless.
All right.
Executive session is just that. Those are for offline, kind of offline
Yeah.
discussions and land, so it's land acquisition, right? So it needs to be
Yes.
sensitive. So, okay. So if there's nothing else, I do think, and I think we touched on this at the last meeting, there still is a slot open for a Conservation Commission member to fill on the land acquisition. So there are two places on the land acquisition committee for Conservation Commission members. And with Jay moving off of our board, that has left a vacancy. So if there is anyone that's interested in filling that position and joining Ned and attending those meetings and having, it is helpful because you're looking at land acquisition through the lens of a conservation and wetlands commission individual, and understanding what our charges are and the value of some of those properties that the town is considering for land acquisition, and the relevance of needing to have it in land acquisition to protect it versus our wetlands and other regulations that are in place to protect, various parcels of land. So it is helpful to have folks with that mindset sit in on those meetings. So, but I certainly recognize it's another obligation. It's another meeting.
I think we started to bring up the issue before that. I wasn't really sure where I stood on that in regards to, technically I was taking Bob Hammond's position. I guess one of the positions is left for the chair of the commission, the chair of the Inland Wetlands Commission. But since he couldn't serve due to a conflict of
Conflict.
interest, I took his spot now. So I don't know if there, like, if the alignment of the positions is that detailed as to if he wanted, like, since he's retired now, I don't know if that changes his conflict of interest status. And and you know, I'm sure we're not that detailed in that if he may want to still have me continue in that position just because he can't make the meetings or something. But I guess we need to kind of figure that out. If
Yeah, well, so we can
If-
chat with him at the next meeting
Yeah.
as well. And then if anyone else thinks they might be interested, we can share that as part of the conversation at the next meeting.
Okay,
So, but the meetings are 5 o'clock Thursdays, second Thursday of the month at 5. So, and we had household hazardous waste last weekend, I believe was successful. I don't have numbers for you folks yet, but as soon as I do, I'll be sure to get those shared out with everyone so that you have an idea as to how we're doing. It's always, I like to find out, you know, and bulk waste this week with the mattress collections and things like that. Some of those are kind of interesting numbers to get each cycle that we go through on these. So,
It's
but I
too
don't,
bad
I don't. I'm
Too
sorry, go
bad we
ahead.
can't, yeah, too bad we can't tally the tonnage that just gets picked up by the other people that roam the streets, because there's a lot of material that gets avoided from landfill.
I know. Right, it's
It's
other
entertaining.
man's treasure, absolutely. So, but that's all I have this evening.
Thanks, Shannon. So we'll move on to approval of the minutes for October 6, 2021. Is there a motion to approve?
so moved. Ned,
Is there a second?
Second, Mark.
Thanks, Mark. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
Yeah, I'll abstain.
Okay, motion carries. And unless there's anything else, Shannon, I think we can close the meeting. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, we can.
We will adjourn at 8:59.
All right, thank you. Thanks, everyone, for calling
Thank
in.
you.
Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.